Hey everyone, and welcome to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and shocked because I didn't say anything stupid right before we started like I normally do. Tara's here too.
Greetings, citizens.
Look, Tara's had a long day. I'm being nice, and I'm intentionally trying not to be a prick tonight. No, I'm not. I'm not going to make any promises and say that it's definitely not going to happen, because sometimes when a softball is thrown, it's hard not to hit the ball, right? It's difficult. It's difficult, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to
Did
do
you
my
just
best.
make a sport analogy?
Do you know what the funny thing is? I feel like the only sport analogies I ever make are baseball related, or I mean, softball's basically the same thing, right? Right. Despite the fact that it's a sport that I should not be making references to. Yeah, I say out of left field all the time. I see that I say, not in the same ballpark. There's a lot of things I say that come from baseball, despite the fact that I should not know anything about baseball. Regardless, we talk about sci-fi movies on this show. This is a sci-fi movie podcast, and
hmm
on this episode, we are
We are nerds, and there will be no sports talk.
Yes, I promise, no sports talk. This episode is the winner of last month's Patreon. Vote every month over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Our patrons at the $5 tier and up vote between 4 films, and the vote for this time was 4 sci-fi movies from the 1930s. So it won't be the next vote, but the idea is that we'll do a 40s vote in maybe a month or two's time, and every couple of months come back and do the next decade, and kind of like a nice broad spectrum. Basically, Tara said, I want to do an old movie, and I said, well, let's put a vote for an old decade then. And that's how this was born. So, yeah, so The Invisible Man was the winner of that vote. It beat out Things to Come, it beat out King Kong, and it beat out Flash Gordon was the other one. So,
I'm surprised. I really thought King Kong would win.
yeah. Yeah, I love Invisible Man, so I'm not complaining.
I love King Kong too.
I do enjoy King Kong, but I am certainly not complaining. I mean, I've already given away how I feel about it. I mean, well, at least I loved it beforehand. It's been a while since I watched it. Maybe my opinion's changed on this viewing. We'll find out. But the original Invisible Man from 1933, directed by James Whale, of course, is about a mad scientist by the name of Jack Griffin who has made himself invisible. And that is not even a spoiler because he's already invisible when the movie starts. Like, it's that's backstory. And, of course, he is going a bit more mad as time goes on, and hijinks will ensue. And that is all I'll say, and spoiler-free. We'll give you a warning in the middle before we go into spoilers and get into the other plot stuff. But I think we can very quickly just go straight into it. Tara, how do you feel about The Invisible Man?
I liked it.
Had you seen it before?
Yes, I'd seen it before. I think I've seen all the monster movies before. Universal monster films. Um, just because eventually they would play on like Turner Classic Movies or something, and I would catch it as a kid.
When you say you've
It
seen
was
them
definitely
all...
familiar, and I remember I read the book in school,
Oh, really?
so I think we watched it as a class too.
When you say you've seen them all the Universal monsters, I assume you just mean the original ones and not all the sequels to all the various monsters, because there's a lot of
That's true.
those.
There's
Yeah,
a lot. I've never
yeah,
seen like Son of Frankenstein.
yeah. Yeah, I've seen some of them, but I haven't seen all of them. Unfortunately, the ones that I think are more interesting, from what I've heard, are the ones I've not seen. Bizarrely, I've seen the dull
Hmm.
ones. Uh,
I've seen Bride of Frankenstein's really good.
oh yeah, but I mean, I think you always count that in with the originals because hell, even my box set, which is just the originals, still has Bride of Frankenstein in it.
That's true.
So, that was almost a disaster. I almost knocked over. I almost filled a bottle of water. It was ready to be anarchy, I tell you. But we're going to get into this movie, and I love Invisible Man. Invisible Man, I'll say it right now, is my favorite of the Universal monsters. I like it more than Frankenstein. I like it more than Dracula. And I definitely like it more than the Mummy and Wolfman because I think those are actually both kind of weak. But
Did the director for this one direct Frankenstein also? Did I see that?
Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, you like James Whale. Yeah, James Whale's
hmm
pretty good. So no, I love it. I think it's got a really great sense of humor. I think Claude Rains as the Invisible Man is delightful. His laughter, his voice and it's only his voice he's got to work with for a lot of the movie.
Yeah.
Is fantastic. He energizes the room. with a tech issue that I have no idea what I was saying before the tech issue happened. So, just I think
I was talking, and I was saying that it's a good thing that Claude Rains is easy to understand.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I never heard any of that. That never came through
No
at
one
all.
like Tom Hardy isn't playing him or something. You know, that would be a disaster.
I think it would be an interesting film, but it'd be a very different type of film.
Or like Vin Diesel just grumbling his way through.
Is this the I Am Groot version of Invisible Man? I am Invisible Man. I am Invisible Man. So, yeah, we'll get into the plot. Obviously, spoilers. There's a couple of things I want to mention. So, there was an NRA screen at the start of this. I don't know if you noticed this after the Universal logo.
Oh yeah, I noticed it.
Yeah, I
don't
was.
know what that means.
I was taken aback by that. I don't think it's because I would, if I was to assume something, and I'm just pulling this out my ass, I would assume that it's got nothing to do with the film itself, and it's more to do with Universal, the company, having some sort of deal with the NRA at the time.
Yeah, I suppose it has to be the same NRA, right?
There was definitely
Doesn't stand for something else.
there was definitely guns in the image, the logo they had. I'm sure it looked like firearms. I think
There's a eagle. I don't know.
What's weird is though is the film's like set entirely in the UK, so it's really weird if that is the NRA that we're thinking of. That's a really strange movie to put that on.
It totally caught me off guard. I meant to look it up, but
Yeah, very, very, very odd. Very odd. Also, I want to talk about inflation for a minute because early on in the movie, there's a price given for something, and I nearly like fell out my seat at how cheap it sounded to me because basically they're going to charge the Invisible Man because he's staying in a room at this like sort of like bar hotel kind of, you know, this little sort of house bed and breakfast kind of thing, and he's been staying there, and we find out that he's been there for like a week, and they've been serving him food every day. He's been staying there for a week, and they've been serving him food every day, maybe even 2 weeks actually, because I think it said his rent's delayed from last week as well, and they're only charging him £3.10. £3.10, to put that in perspective of what that is now, that wouldn't even buy you like a snack at the movie theater now. £3.10.
no.
It wouldn't even. I mean, it would maybe get you a bag of chips, as in like steak fries. Yeah, Americans would call them, like from the chippy. You'd get a large bag of those for £3.10, and that's what you'd get for £3.10. Not bed and breakfast for a week.
I mean, a bag of fresh potato versus 2 weeks rent. That's a pretty tough. Those were about equal.
I mean, obviously inflation's a thing, but I don't think I realised it was that stark from 1933.
Yeah,
sorry.
we often joke about it when we do our reviews of the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. But this is even more than that, and this is like right after the Depression. I mean,
Yeah, the 30s, and it takes place in the 30s, unlike the book. I think the book takes place earlier.
yeah, it seemed like the 30s anyway, because there was cars and shit, so it seemed 30s. 30s-esque, and plus there was like a radio broadcast at one point, so I'm sure if
and also just what the female lead was wearing was very 1930s.
I'll take your word for it. That could have literally been 100 years prior for all I knew what she was wearing.
Oh no corset.
Fair point. I was not paying attention to the corset. This is true. So that price really stuck out to me
of
at the
its
start.
time.
As are some of the police helmets they're going around in. The big bulky pointy helmets, which
all the policemen have such great faces in the movie. This is a film of great faces.
There's one
great
guy.
Mustache.
Yeah, there's a guy towards the end with the mustache with the really sort of thin bits at the side. And it's not quite handlebars. It's different than that. It's like styled differently. It's like it goes out to the points, but the points then have this little extra styled bit that's like a thin line. It's hard to describe. It's almost like it's got like a little braid at the end of each side of the mustache.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stashes.
Yes. A lot of screaming women in this as well. Only really two characters, to be honest, but they both scream a lot. The landlady at the bed and breakfast screams, sometimes justifiably, don't get me wrong, and sometimes not so justifiably, but it's always a very loud shriek of
Yeah.
comical proportions. And then Flora, very unfortunate name, the sort of love interest for the Invisible Man. She has
How is that unfortunate?
Flora? Well, I've never heard the name before. It sounds kind of silly to me.
Oh,
So it sounds like a brand of margarine.
flora?
Yeah, is that?
I think like flora and fauna, just type of like vegetation, but like something that flowers.
I'm sure this is a brand of. Flora is a brand of buttery spread sold in the UK. Yes. I knew I wasn't mad. Also, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Ireland, Finland, Sweden, Spain, Poland, Portugal, South Africa, Hong Kong, Singapore, Sri Lanka, Mauritius, I don't even know what that is, New Zealand, and Australia. There you go.
Okay.
I knew
So
I
it's
wasn't
a
making that.
spread.
It's butter. This is cheap. It's cheap, low-fat butter.
All right. Well, I was thinking more like flowers, which is kind of interesting because she's played by Gloria Stewart, who plays Rose in Titanic.
The new
Another
Titanic?
flower name.
The old lady?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I didn't recognize her. She's like 60 years younger.
Oh my God, I know. They're like totally opposite ends of her life.
This was actually like really close to the original like the actual ship Titanic.
Yeah.
She probably wasn't born though. It's probably just enough time. It's about 20 years.
Yeah, probably. She was probably around like 18 or something when she did this movie.
Yeah, so she's probably not quite old enough to be around there, but she wasn't conceived long after the Titanic. Like it was close. It was close. Yeah. Okay. Well, I never knew her name, the actress's name, so I never would have pieced that together. So that is actually very interesting that this is the old lady from Titanic. I would never ever have caught that.
Yeah, I think these are her two most famous movies.
Just one big role at the start, one big role at the end.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe she became Hollywood royalty for a bunch of films that I've never seen, but
Okay, let's click on her. Let's see what's her most known roles. Number 1 is Titanic. Number 2 is The Invisible Man. Number 3 is The Old Dark House from 1932. And then The Three Musketeers from 1939. That sounds notable. Sounds notable. So, oh, honestly, is she good in this movie? Not really. Her character doesn't really have anything to do other than shriek occasionally and just be the over the top damsel who's always like high strung.
yeah, this movie's just about one person, really.
Yeah, like I think there's a couple of faults in the movie for sure that you can dive into if you want to, but ultimately, what it's good at, what its focuses on, is very good at. Like,
Right.
very
Yeah,
good at.
I agree. It's it's a lot more fun than the other Universal monster movies,
Mm-hmm.
and the tone of it is almost kind of strange because it is so comical, and but it does get really dark. People do die in the film.
Yeah, it's bordering on comedy, but I think it skirts the line. It's kind of like. Do you know, there was a scene at one point where it wasn't quite a POV, but it was almost like I don't even know if POV even existed up until this point in cinema. Like it might not have happened yet. But there was a scene where, because they were kind of following where he was walking, but he was invisible, where it almost felt like the opening scene from Halloween, where it was it was the POV of the killer going like from one area to the next, and it kind of like summed up what this movie kind of is to me, is that it's kind of an early example of one of those movies where you follow the serial killer. You don't follow the victims or the police or whatever. You follow the serial killer, like the Maniac remake, or maybe even something like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. But the difference here is that Claude Rains' character has such a whimsy about him that it turns it into a black comedy. It turns it into where we're kind of laughing.
I mean, his laugh is so contagious.
It is. It's great. There's a sense of humor to it, unlike those movies. So it's not disturbing, even though, like, it should be terrifying. There's a reason why the new one coming out next year, which I think is more of a straight up horror movie, so it might be more of a Screams than an Ace episode.
Is that was that going to be done by Blumhouse?
Yeah, it's Blumhouse. Lee Wannell, who wrote the Insidious films, but more specifically directed the third one, is going to direct it. And it's Elizabeth Moss who's in it. And it's her boyfriend, her abusive ex-boyfriend, who everyone thinks is dead, is actually now just invisible. So it's a straight up, he's going to like torment her kind of movie from the sounds of it. So, what sounds like a fine take on the Invisible Man, because it's not like they're just remaking this one. It's like no, here's the horror of like someone who's awful being invisible, kind of thing. Which I suppose in a way is kind of what they did with Hollow Man. But Hollow Man was very back and forth in terms of its quality, I'd say. Like, there's some stuff to like in that movie, there's a lot not to like.
There's a lot to like in that movie, though.
Is this a comment on what may or may not be Kevin Bacon's penis?
Yep.
I mean, it might be really his penis, but I don't want to like break your hopes and dreams here, but there's a good chance it wasn't really his.
You know, I take what I can get. I just want him to know that I'm grateful.
Okay. You're vegan, Tara. You're not supposed to be wanting bacon. I'm gonna let that joke sit there for a second. Well, no, the movie's really good. And I think the concept of an invisible man is interesting enough that you can go dark with it, you can go silly with it, you can do a number of different things, and all the different tones have been tried over the years. I think it's very interesting that the very first attempt was this tone and this style. And I would hasten to guess that the reason for that actually might in part be the limitations of what they could do at the time with the special effects. And don't get me wrong, they're actually
look really good.
Yeah, they're pretty solid for the most part. Like, I mean, they have that kind of old timey look to it where you can kind of see the matte lines around things, but like, it looks good for its time.
I was surprised that they were as good as they were though for this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the scene that stuck out to me at one point, he describes like some of the things that he can't do. He says, "Oh, you can't go out if it's like say raining because the water will hit off him." And I thought that sounds like an amazing visual, but obviously there's no way they were going to be able to do that at the time. But they bring it up. There's like, no, we thought of this. We thought of like him going outside in certain conditions that would kind of reveal his location.
Yeah, you can't go out in fog because he would just look like a blob or something in the fog.
You see like a humanoid kind of shape kind of walking through the fog. Yeah. And
I thought, ooh, that sounds really creepy too.
Yeah, maybe the new one will do some
and
of
he
this
lives
stuff.
in London, right? So.
yeah.
But it's a lot of fog.
Maybe the new one will do some of this stuff. Maybe that'll be kind of their homage to the original. Is maybe taking some of those ideas that they clearly thought of, but it was, oh, we can't do them. It wouldn't even surprise me if they'd done tests, like if they'd actually like tried to do some camera tricks and see if they could pull something off. But there's some good stuff in this. There really is. Like it's an impressive array of effects for a movie from 1933.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was really looking for a lot of the cheats in it, and there are a couple of things that I saw, like the around the end where he has the wrap around his head, you can still see like his nostrils through it.
Sure, yeah.
At one point, but for the most part, like they're pretty great. Like they really hold up well. I imagine, with the quality that we watch it in now with HD remasters and stuff, that it's a lot easier to spot the stuff than it was when it first came out.
That's kind of true. Because the weird thing is, though, is that film's actually very high quality. In 35mm film, which most films are shown on, well, were anyway before digital, changed everything, is actually, higher quality than HD. Like, there's a reason why like movies are still looking better in 4K. It's because the film that they come from is actually that high quality. Of course, it varied from theatre to theatre because the prints got worn down. So if you saw something after it had been out for a while, yeah, it probably would look worse than, like what we're seeing it today. But arguably, when it first released, that first like weekend that came out, say, like it would actually potentially be better than what we're seeing today. Now, of course, there's a lot of factors as well. If the projectionist is an idiot and doesn't have it focused properly, then that's like another thing that makes it blurry. Or there's a lot of caveats to this. But in theory, a true like new print of the film at the time could have looked as good as at least what we're watching on Blu-ray or whatever. So, I mean, you are right. I just wanted to, like, throw in some caveats because.
No, I understand. I mean, I know my first Blu-ray I bought was the 2001
of course it was.
Space Odyssey on Blu-ray, of course. And I remember thinking, like, how does it look like it was filmed yesterday? If the only ever, like, ways that I saw it before, I couldn't read the writing on the wall in the background. But now I can read it because of the digital enhancements to it. And it's like, oh, well, clearly they didn't reshoot everything or, like, sub in a different background so that you can read the sign now.
It's because film already has
great quality. They just are able to bring that great quality to digital format instead of on film.
Yeah, film's actually really high quality. Especially 35 or up, and I think actually 2001, if I remember right, is actually not 35. That was shot on like 65mm, so that was even better. That's essentially IMAX of the time. So. That movie looks gorgeous. No, I agree. I because that was not the first Blu-ray I bought. I think the first Blu-ray I bought was Batman Begins, but 2001, along with Clockwork Orange, Eyes Wide Shut, Full Metal Jacket, and what was the other Kubrick one that they always do? Shining. All the Warner Brothers ones they always release. Like those were like I got all like 5 or 6 of those movies they put out as like my like 4th through 9th Blu-rays. Like I got them all at the same time. Like right at the start, they're when I had like one little shelf of Blu-rays, 2001 was there.
Kubrick is the way to go.
Basically, I'm just sucking up because I know it's Tara's favorite movie. But that was back when every disc I was putting in, I was like, whoa! I was like seeing the movie again for the first time. Everything looks better and beautiful, and it's great. So yeah, I mean, watch movies in Blu-ray in black and white. There's this weird misconception as well, since we're talking about The Invisible Man, that black and white doesn't benefit as much from HD and like 4K and things like that, and it's the most ridiculous thing ever. If anything, it ends up looking even better. Oh man, some black and white movies look gorgeous in HD.
True. So. I mean, when we watched Day the Earth Stood Still too, that looked great.
Oh, it did, yeah. And I love we're at that point now with HD. Obviously, 4K is a thing now. In 4Ks in those early stages, where only some of the biggest movies of all time are in 4K, from the past. And they're just sort of slowly starting to do more and more. But I'm glad we're at the point now with Blu-ray and just 1080p where, little movies like that not as many people talk about can be had in that quality. It's just nice that and if only The Abyss would finally make its way to 1080p.
Maybe Cameron will do like an anniversary edition or something.
Well, it was the 30th anniversary this year, so...
Oh.
I know
think
this.
You've brought that up before.
I know this because it's the same age as me. So it's easy to know when the anniversaries are. So if it's not this year, we're waiting until I'm 35, the bastard.
That's all right. It'll be right before the Titanic, fifth Avatar film comes out.
The 5th Avatar. In 5 years? That's a bit optimistic, I think. But, so... No, Invisible Man, it holds up. Like honestly, I think this one holds up maybe the best out of all of those Universal Monster movies. I think everything that makes it charming and funny is still equally charming and funny. None of it is dated.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I love that they just acknowledge that he's naked.
Yeah, they mention it because he says he's getting really cold all the time. Which is funny because obviously that would be like such a taboo to do in 1933, and obviously they get away with it because there's no one really standing there. But the power of imagination is a thing. Like it's like
I know when it's just like the one shirt that he's wearing and like no pants.
Like he's flopping
like
about,
rolling around and stuff. I'm like, oh my god.
Remember that scene in Hollow Man where Kevin Bacon's thing was flapping around in infrared? That's what's happening right now. He's dancing around. It's flapping. You see Watchmen, Dr. Manhattan, it was flapping around? It's flapping! It's all in your mind, but it's there. So they get away with it. And this movie's like a PG. Like, it's literally like rated as a PG. I mean, obviously, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't. I'm just, it's in your head. If anyone stops to think about it, it's there.
Yep.
So.
No, I liked it. I liked the movie a lot.
I'm glad.
Holds up really well. I agree.
It's an absolute classic. So we'll give a spoiler warning. So full spoilers for The Invisible Man from 1933. Some people think it's stupid to give a spoiler warning for a movie this old. I think that anyone should have the option of opting out before spoilers start, no matter what the movie.
No, totally. Yeah.
So, but as always, these days now, before we actually start the spoiler section, Tara, how can people support everything we do?
You can check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MilefuzzTV and donate as little as $1 per month, and you'll get a bunch of bonus features for doing it, including access to some behind-the-scenes footage that Peter's starting to put up.
Bonus bits, I'm calling that, yeah. Basically, if we tangent for a long time in an episode and I think it drags the pace, I'll cut it out, but I'll still put it up in Patreon as a bonus for the $1 patrons, so...
it's going to be so many ace ones. All we do is tangent.
Well, yeah, so I put up the first one earlier today, but there was actually 2 from the same episode, so there's another one going up tomorrow.
So yeah, for $1.
You get that, and then you get an extra episode every month. In fact, what we're doing right after we do this is recording this month's bonus episode. Well, last month's actually. By the time this actually goes up, it'll be last month's bonus episode. So hope you enjoyed the Leviathan discussion. But for your $1 or more. But yeah, so go to patreon.com/MilefuzzTV. But we will get into Invisible Man now. The movie starts with Jack, right? Jack was his name. I keep calling him Invisible Man. So Jack's walking through the snow, and I love this as an atmosphere. He's going through the cold snow. He's got his bandages on, his hat, his glasses, and he's all bundled. And he gets to the inn, the bed and breakfast, and it's a pretty lively place. There's a lot of regulars in there, and there's some character stuff going on. There's a guy with the piano, and he's like taking a bow, and then the guy sitting next to the piano puts in like a little coin, and then it starts playing on its own to show that he's not really playing it, and he turns around really quickly and starts like trying to pretend that he's playing it, and everyone's laughing at him. Just little things like that.
Yeah, a lot of good character.
a little bit of character. Like I say, the landlady's very notable because she's so like kind of high strung and like, well, very well, sir. Yes, we could have a room for you, sir. And then she shrieks a lot, of course. But he comes in and he wants a room, and it's weird because they're not used to giving out the rooms during the winter. It's usually just the summer people come and rent the rooms. So the thing's a little bit weird, but she's like, okay, fine, you really want it. And they set him up. And he's here because he wants to do experiments. He's got his lab kit with him. He's got all his beakers and test tubes and all these little swirly tubes and everything else that a scientist, every good
all
scientist
his science
needs.
equipment, yeah.
Yes.
So he can science.
So he can science. I brought science! So he's basically trying to find the antidote because he's already made himself invisible, so he's looking for the antidote so he can switch back and forth. And he insists that no one come and see him. So what this leads to, which is really nice, is that the crowd in the pub start to kind of like almost vocalize for the audience what everyone's kind of thinking, like, oh, why is he a criminal? Is he on the run? Is that why he wants privacy? Like, what's going on here? Like, I bet he's a fiend, or I bet he's this. And even obviously we know the title of the movie, we expect him to be invisible, but it adds to the kind of the build up to finally seeing it because they're all kind of like speculating why does he want all this privacy the way he does? Yeah. So it's really neat. I like it.
Yeah, and I think it's smart to start it off in the winter because, like, somebody walking through the snow would be entirely covered up from head to toe.
Absolutely, yeah. No, you're right. It's like, oh yeah, maybe it's just because he's cold. Maybe it's just to protect his face. It's not that he's being weird.
Right.
But of course, when he comes in the building, he doesn't like pull it down and show his mouth. He just stays as he is and walks up and asks for his room. So yeah, sure enough, and we do get a glimpse of his mouth briefly because she brings him in some food, but she forgets the mustard. Tells the other girl off for it. Oh, imagine forgetting his mustard, and he wants to be left alone. And he goes in, and she shrieks when she sees him because he's got his mouth uncovered so he can eat. And he's like, and he holds up the napkin. And he's like, I told you not to disturb me. Yeah. It's imperative that I be left alone to do my work. He's very. Claude Rains is great. He's so animated.
Yeah, he's great. I rewound this scene a couple of times because it goes so fast, and I thought, I wonder if I could see anything because it's the first time we get to see anything that would be invisible. But I think he's just wearing black.
Really?
But it looks really good because it happens so fast.
It happens so fast, yeah, to get away with it. Yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool. Tarragon sleuthing, freeze framing it. Like, I'm going to see if he's actually invisible here. I'm not too thrilled with this.
I was just curious, we haven't seen any. That was the first shot of him being invisible, or some part of him being invisible. So I wanted to see what it looked like.
Oh, Joe, they should have done as a joke, given we were making all those penis jokes, is they should have had him go to the toilet and just unzip and just sort of stand there. But the idea being that his penis is invisible, but but it just
maybe in a sequel.
Maybe. I've never seen the sequels actually. Reason for us to do them at some point, I suppose. But so then we get introduced to the other characters we kind of get to know in the film, which is his kind of not partner, but like him and this Kemp. Kemp's also into Flora, and Flora's very worried because Jack's ran off and they don't know where he is, and her father's Dr. Cranley, the guy that they both work for. And he's like, "Oh, I'm sure he's fine, dear. There's nothing to worry about." This is back when every movie, like every main character's family, were always really rich. It was always in a mansion, and they're always like high society, with the nice suits on, and like everything's do or die. She's like, "Oh, my poor Jack is away. Oh, I'm so worried. Oh, I may faint."
Yeah, you're right. But like, I love the way that Jack still dresses himself even when he's invisible in the super rich outfits and such.
Oh no, it's really funny in him. I was just talking about the rest of them when we meet them, is that this is how they all are.
Yeah.
I did note down though that because Kemp basically goes to her and he's like, "Well, Jack's been gone for like at least 12 hours now. It's time to make my move." And he goes in and he's like, "Hey, Flora, I must tell you how I feel about you. I must know how you feel in return. I must tell you." And she just stands up. What she says is like, "Leave me alone. How can you?" And then she runs off.
It's interesting because they're really setting him up to be the antagonist to Jack, but Jack is the villain.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, he's the villain. I mean, Kemp's maybe a little Weasley at times, but not by much. Like he's a fairly innocent guy in all this, outside of maybe trying to ask out Flora, like within hours of Jack being gone. But...
Yeah, and she calls him out on it too, like, "How dare you?" basically.
Yes, I mean, don't you know, it's a very 1930s "How dare you? You'll make me faint" kind of thing. But I'm so flustered. Oh dear.
Oh, hysterical women.
Women be fainting.
Yeah, it's probably because they lose so much blood.
Yeah, I'm not even going to ask about that. What exactly you were getting at with that joke? But
I thought it was obvious.
I think it's fairly obvious. I'll be honest. I kind of went first to the fact that they tend to be wearing corsets in the olden days, and that was about circulation. But then it kind of clicked. You were probably just making a period joke, and I thought, "Oh, okay, it's just menstruating. All right."
Well, we've already established she's not wearing a corset. True. That's how I know it's modern.
Modern. You telling me women in the 17th century did not get periods? Menstruation is a modern invention? Is that what you're saying to me?
No, not at all. I need you to listen to me.
Okay. All right. So we introduce these characters, and we come back to Jack. And as time has passed, they try to charge him, and she wants him kicked out because he gets so upset that she tries to come in the room that he ends up making her drop all of her her china or cutlery, and her plates and whatnot. And she's so upset that she goes to her husband and demands that he throw him out and get make sure he pays and get rid of him because I don't want him here anymore. So he goes in and he's like, "No, you listen here. Yeah, you're the wife, so you have to go. You go right now." Yeah. He's like, "I came here for peace and quiet to do my work. It is imperative that I be left alone. Go away, you cretin, you filthy poor beggar," or something to that effect, is what he says. And he ends up pushing him down the stairs, which then makes the landlady screech again. She's like, "Ah! Police! Call police!" So they go get a policeman.
Nailed it.
Thank you. And then I noted down what the policeman's response was because to come outside and they say, "Oh, this awful man, he's a cretin, he threw my husband down the stairs," and the policeman's response was like, "Oh," and then he comes like
They're so British.
It's a very nonchalant, just kind of like, "Oh, all right then, I'll come in and have a look see."
Then cheerio. Bob's your uncle.
Hey, you can probably do a better English accent than I can. As much as many people watching or listening to this might think I have a similar accent, I do not. I cannot do English at all.
Yeah. You can only do John Hammond's voice.
Hello, John. Hello, John. Hello, John. Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Oh, slight tangent. Did you see there's like a Jurassic World
short
film that was released?
I did see it existed. I haven't bothered looking it up yet, but yeah, it was weird. Like Colin Trevorrow directed it.
Yeah.
How weird. I know. Odd. Very odd.
Anyway, tangent over.
Tangent over. Yeah, that's not one we'll cut out and put in Patreon. That one's fine. But yeah, I like. So I love all this stuff. I love the policeman coming up. He's got his baton out. Because this is, of course, not a place where police are carrying guns all the time. He's got his baton. He's ready to give him a whack, right? And he's like, "All right then, son, you're coming with me then. Coming down to the station, come quietly or I'll have to cuff you." That's just kind of his attitude. And again, I still sound Scottish. I'm doing kind of the gruff version of his voice, but with my own accent, because I can't do the English accent. It's in the ballpark. I mean, most of the Americans would even know the difference. It's fine. So he's like, "Oh, so you want to see me then? You'd like to see me? Well, I'll show you." And he starts like taking off his bandages, and it's this great visual effect as he's taking off his bandage. You just see more and more of the empty space. I will say there's one tell here that kind of like gives away kind of the, not that obviously it's an effect, but it gives away the credit how is credidity a word? Not isn't the cridness of the effect. Is cridness a word?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, cridness. Yeah. Okay. Let us know in the comments. Is that a real word? But it's so he's talking. He's constantly talking, and you can see his mouth's moving up and down as he's talking the whole time, until the effect of him like where he's at, you can see through his eyes, and then it's clearly just like a hollow puppet they've got with the bandages on it. So his mouth stops moving for like a couple of lines, and it's like, okay, I can see kind of the fault in here is to get the tell of how you're doing this, but it's still fun. It's still
pretty good though.
Yeah, no, it's still good, especially once he starts like moving around the room and he's still got his like shirt on or whatever, and then of course he starts messing around with him because he pushes the cop, and the cop goes down the stairs. He's like, "All right, well, if he gets out of that room, we'll never catch him. So we have to go up and take him in. Like, I need a bunch of you volunteers. Come up, men, come up with me." And he gets some of the bar patrons to come up, and they're trying to like corner him in the room, and he's just playing with them. He's like pushing them around. He's hitting them here, he's hitting them there, and they think they've got him cornered, but he just goes out the window.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't. He pretends to go out the window, and when the cop goes over, he's like, "Oh, you think I'd jump out the window like some?" I don't know what he says. Some whatever. But again, it's very funny. He's very maniacally charming with the way he talks. It's almost like a predecessor to Mark Hamill's Joker sometimes, like the way his voice goes.
I could not stop thinking about the Invisible Maniac.
I love how the Invisible Maniac actually names himself as well. "I'm the Invisible Maniac."
Yeah.
Yes.
Same idea, right? Like he goes crazy because he takes his drug and makes him invisible, but at a cost. Yeah,
the cost of his sanity. Where he thinks he's, because basically what happens, we find out that the key ingredient to his chemicals that done this to him also makes him go insane. So that's why he's going power mad and crazy. So I guess they're implying that he was actually a nice enough person before he took it. Like he was fine before, and then he's went crazier as times went on. Invisible Maniac, of course, by contrast, his entire goal in life was just to rip the tops off of women. That was his entire thing from start to finish.
His only reason for becoming invisible was so that he could voyeur.
Yeah, it was just boobs as well. It was never anything else. It was just the boobs.
Mm.
He was very specific about.
Although there were plenty of butts in the scene.
Oh yeah, and some of the shower scenes and
he was a
whatnot.
boob guy.
but he was definitely a boob guy. I'm
Highly
still
recommend.
impressed with the. There's actually one moment in this where I'm going to kind of ask a similar thing, not the exact same thing, but one of my comments on the Invisible Maniac. And if you're wondering where you can hear all my comments about the Invisible Maniac, it was the first ever Patreon exclusive episode that we did of Streams After Midnight. So for $1 per month, you can get access to that library, and you can go and listen to me and Tim talk about the Invisible Maniac, a movie that sounds so great that Tara immediately sought out the movie after she heard us talk about it. But so
Did not disappoint.
Yeah, one of my comments in that, it's a really great bad movie. But one of my comments in that was that there was points in that movie where he like pinned a woman's arms against a wall. Like he clearly had one arm in one wrist, one arm in the other. He had her pinned up against the wall, and then somehow, whilst holding both hands in place against the wall, ripped off her shirt. Which, by the way, he's so lucky that none of the women in this movie wore a bra. Like every single one of them, as soon as the shirt was ripped, boobs. And I'm like, how is he doing this?
Very talented man.
Does he have like? Is he using like a foot for one of the arms? Has he got like his foot up in the wall, and then he's like using the one free hand to rip the shirt? Like it was very athletic.
So many questions unanswered.
Very stretchy man is my only conclusion I can draw from this. And
he was pretty gangly.
Yeah, and there was one moment in this where I had a similar thing where the Invisible Man. So it's when So after all this, like he gets away, of course, and he leaves, and he has a lot of fun on the way out. Of course, he like throws a bike at people. He throws a broom, like it's like a traditional old school broom that a witch would have, and he throws it at someone, and he's just maniacally commenting things and laughing. It's just a really great fun sequence. It's really funny, but basically no one believes this police officer, that there's an invisible man. His superior just assumes that he was drinking at the bar, and that's why he thinks he's seen this. And like every witness, so there's a scene where he comes down to the pub and he's talking to all the various witnesses, all the men, and he's talking to one. And the guy's like, "Oh, I'd had a couple of drinks, but something definitely knocked off my hat." It's like, "So you had a couple of drinks and a gust of wind knocked off your hat. All right, done. Right, you're ruled out." And he just doesn't believe anyone. And then the Invisible Man, who's back here to steal his research back because he didn't take any of his notes with him, he somehow gets presumably on top of the table that they're all sitting at, even though they're all sitting around the whole thing.
Yeah, everybody's super crowded. Yeah. There's no room for him to like get in there.
But he picks up the pot of ink and throws it in the constable's face, and it's like, he laughs, and it's like, and I'm like, the only way he could have done this is if he's like actually standing on top of the table, probably, because like everyone's so like they're all like shoulder to shoulder around the table. There's no gap. So
yeah. Well, there's another scene also after the bank where like a crowd of people swarm him to like grab money that he's thrown out, and like the till or whatever is still floating above the crowd. Like, where is he standing? Is he totally smothered? Is he on top of all those people?
Do you call that a till as well?
Mm-hmm.
I thought you called that a register.
Register or till.
I thought till.
Usually the till is just the part that pops out.
We call the whole thing the till.
The tray.
We call the whole cash register a till. So which is why I'd never heard an American use that term before, or Canadian in disguise. Tara, Canadian in disguise. Tara, more than meets the eye. Sorry.
Well, it's okay. I like that song.
Your name doesn't really fit the. I don't want to give your last name away because I need the extra syllables to make it work, but I'm not going to do it. So,
I wish to remain anonymous, if not invisible.
Oh, invisible Tara, that does sound like a nightmare. You got up to all sort of mischief. All sort of mischief. We should have started this review off camera. You should have head over there. I could have head over there and just like talked from the side.
It'd be great.
Because I can bring the mic around. What this is.
Just two empty chairs.
Hi, Tara. Hello. Welcome, everyone, to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I'm Pierre. Damn it. That's a golden idea. I am pissed that I didn't do that.
If only there was a way to edit this.
Then we'd have to edit this out and redo the intro. It'd be a whole... That's a whole to do.
Yeah.
I think it's funnier.
I gotta go to sleep.
I think it's funnier if they just hear hear me be upset that I didn't do it. I think that's more amusing to people. Anyway, so he actually goes to Kemp. He goes to Kemp's, the big house where Kemp lives, and he, because Kemp's like sitting there, and there's people over the news talking about the possibility. What I liked about it though is that this is before anyone believes it. This is when this is like pre-proof. And what they're actually saying is that there's like a mass delusion going on where lots of people think that they think there's an invisible man around. So it's like, oh no, there's a disease going around where people are having these delusions. And I like that. I like that they actually went through that sort of pace. Because this is the sort of thing where I almost expect in a movie from this era to just have everyone believe it immediately. Because it's just that type of...
Right, but I mean, if you're taking it seriously at all, like, who could believe that?
Exactly, yeah. But there's so many like horror and sci-fi movies from this kind of era where I feel like the characters believe things far too quickly. Like it's kind of a trope of the time. But
They did it in The Invisible Maniac, and that was like what, early 90s, late 80s?
I believe that was exactly 1990, if I recall.
1990.
Yeah. Yep. I was 1 year old. Little did I know that one of my favorite
Why are
movies...
you obsessed with talking about your age?
I'm not obsessed with it. What are you talking about?
Is this because I told you don't talk about my age before we started recording?
No. I don't know. I associate years after I was born with whatever age I was at that time, okay? I don't think that's that weird.
All right.
Tara's age is confidential, but I've agreed to keep it locked in the Male Fuzz vault.
Whatever. I think everyone knows if they've listened to the show.
I'll go back and censor the other episodes. Whenever there's a reference to what your age, or if it's something that could work it out, I'll just be like, bleep!
Thank you. I'll demand it when I renew my contract.
Tara is 30, bleep! Or would you like them not to know even the decade, or that
okay.
range?
My 30s is fine.
Okay. Tara is bleep teen. What? She doesn't look good for her age. Unnecessary censorship can lead to a lot of laughs. Best segment on Jimmy Kimmel. So, yeah, so I like this. And Jack shows up and he is invisible and he starts smoking in front of him. And Kim's just like in shock. He's just watching in shock. He's like, he can't even say a word. It's a long time before he says it. He just kind of points to things and kind of nods, and his just mouth is agape. And Jack's like, okay, fine.
It's a fun scene to watch too, because we get to see the cigarette light
and
be smoked, and the smoke come up around him.
Yeah, no, it's a really. In terms of the effects, this is one of the highlight scenes, and he's like, okay, go get me a robe and some bandages, because if you can see me, you won't feel as weird, even though I'm invisible underneath. You'll feel better. And he's like, yeah, I need a partner. And even though it's not like a choice thing, he's like, no, like I need a partner. So you're going to be my errand boy. You're going to wait me at this time. Don't talk to anyone. But we've got a job first tonight. We've got a job to go and do. Which is when he goes and does the ink thing. He's away to get his research back, and. And this is where we hear a lot of things. We hear about some of the rules. He can't go out in the rain. He has to be careful about even dirt under his fingernails could be an issue and give him away. Things like that. And a lot of this stuff is really fun stuff that obviously they can't show in the time period. But it's great to know they were thinking about it. Like they were thinking about all the ways that he could sort of be given away.
Right.
Obviously, it's something like Hollow Man that we mentioned before, where 1999 effects or 2000 effects. So okay, we can do the water hitting them, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Although I bet you that probably doesn't look that good now. I'm sure that'll have
I don't know.
aged.
I remember it being impressive, but
At the time, sure, but
the whole film probably doesn't hold up very well.
Nah, probably not.
We'll have to do it eventually.
It's sci-fi. Yeah, we can do it.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So fun stuff, and they go back, and there's a great thing where he tells them, like, okay, I'm going to sleep now, we're going to do this tomorrow, blah, 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 and you have to come and wake me, come and give me more food at this time in the morning. And this is after he's just fed him as well, because he's just, like, finishing up his food. And there's a great moment where he goes downstairs, and he looks at the telephone, and he almost, like, picks it up, but he kind of, like, backs away, and it's like, oh, he's so scared of him, because he doesn't know if he's in the room. Like, he could have snuck down and be watching him.
Yeah. It really is terrifying, like, the idea that somebody who wants to kill you or is in the room with you, but you can't see them.
Yeah, because they really play with it for the rest of it, because once the police do get involved after this, and they put like a bulletin on the radio and they're looking for him, it does get very interesting. All the little ways they try and combat the fact that he's invisible. There's a point where when they're forming a plan, they have like 10 men like line the edge of the room with a net and walk from one side to the other to make sure that he's not in the room listening to the plan.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really fun little beats like that. But no, this is the inventive stuff where they thought about it. They thought about how maybe they could tackle it. And what would the police actually do? Admittedly, a lot of it goes out the window when one idiot cop mistakes a cat for an invisible person and is sure that the invisible man is beyond the wall, because they've put like just a bit of earth at the top of this wall, in front of the police station, and the idea being that he'll kick the dirt when he goes up there, and then they're going to throw like paint on him so they can see him. But this poor cat gets covered in black paint instead, and I'm like, God damn you, poor kitty. Poor Kay. I was not happy about that. With that. But it's the funness of Claude Rains and his delivery of stuff. It's him laughing at the police as he's going. Because this is the thing, they've got this whole plan where they're going to take. Because he says he's going to kill a Kemp. He's like, oh no, you're the one who ratted me out. That's why the police are here tonight. Because he does eventually rat him out. Although he does call Dr. Cranley first, and Flora comes over and has a little chat with him. But he's like, I'm going to kill you tomorrow night at 10 o'clock, which is very Joker, actually. It's kind of funny. I almost wonder if the Joker is actually inspired a little bit by the Invisible Man, because
maybe
the very first ever comic that the Joker was in, which was Batman issue 1, which is not the first ever Batman comic. Batman appeared in Detective Comics 27.
Yeah. And
that was going for about a year or whatever before Batman #1 came out. But Joker's in Batman #1. And the plot of that, at least one of, because there's 2 Joker stories in it, but the plot of it is that he announces that he's going to kill someone at a time, like that night. So the police are like around trying to protect the person. It's like, oh, how's he going to do it? And they actually used a little bit of that in The Dark Knight. There's a whole sequence in the middle of that where they know he's like going after some people, and they're trying to like protect the judge and the lawyer, whoever it is, and Harvey Dent's like the third one that he doesn't get, but. So they actually used a little bit of Batman #1, at least in terms of inspiration for that movie. And I'm just wondering, because the thing here is like, no, I'm going to kill you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And the police are trying to deal with that and like use him as bait. Like, I have to wonder, like, was there a little bit of inspiration when they were writing Batman #1? Like, did this inspire that plot beat?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it occurred to me as I was watching. But they've got this whole thing where they're going to change the costume of... they're going to like bring Kemp out of the police station and then change him into a police uniform so he can sneak out the back and the Invisible Man won't know he's there. But then, of course, when he's driving away afterwards, after he's left the other police, like, you just hear Claude Rains start speaking to him from the back seat. He's like, I was standing next to you when you were changing your clothes. Like, I was there the whole time. Like, you didn't have a chance. And he dies. He goes off a cliff in the car. And... we get some pyrotechnics.
Pretty decent explosion.
Yeah. So no, it's like, yeah. I mean, honestly, my only real complaint about the movie, the only thing that I think kind of drags it down a little bit, is that the ending is very quick. Like, basically he goes into a farmer's barn, and the farmer he goes in there to sleep on the hay, and the farmer like sort of catches him breathing and goes and tells the police. And then we just have like a final showdown at the farm. Like, it's very random. It's very just like, oh, okay, time to end the movie. So
yeah,
that's how we catch him. I don't even catch him. That's how we kill him. But it's snowing now, so they circle around the barn, a big circle of police, and they intentionally no, leave the snow untouched as best we can, so that the only footsteps are his. And this is actually probably the visual effect that impressed me the most in this movie. Is
definitely. I was wondering how they did it.
Yeah, there's probably some stuff in the extras even. I should probably watch them, but there's footsteps in the snow, and then when they shoot him, noticeably no blood, which would have actually been nice to see, like the blood hit the snow, because the red. I mean, obviously it's black and white, but like the red like contrasting with the white, even in black and white, is a really nice visual.
I mean, they could have done blood, right, if they wanted to. Because All Quiet on the Western Front was only like a couple years before this, and they had blood in that. They had like limbs that were cut off.
I mean, maybe they could have. Maybe it was like maybe they get away with it in a war movie because it's historical. Like, we're doing something like, I feel like maybe a war movie gets away with more just because of the subject. But even when he gets shot though, he like falls down. There's like a sort of big impression that lands in the snow. So it's a really nice effect. Like, the whole thing looks really good. I was quite I hadn't seen this in a while, and I'd forgotten how good this stuff at the end looked. So as much as I think the ending's rushed,
great.
I think the effect itself is great. So, no, happy with that. So, and of course, he's not quite dead yet. He's dying. He's in the hospital. Flora comes to see him, and sort of says his goodbye. And he becomes visible. So we see Claude Rains at the very end of the film. He becomes whole as he dies, and that's where it's the end. And the plane goes round.
The only time we ever see his face.
Yeah.
Right before he dies.
Joe, I was ready to call shenanigans at the start because there was like hair sticking through his bandages, and I'm like, what the hell's this? He shouldn't have hair sticking through his bandages, but it's a wig. He takes it off.
He's got a wig on. Yeah, enough. I noticed it too.
Fair enough. You thought of everything, movie. You thought of everything. No, it's a delightful little movie. Like, Claude Rains is energetic. He's constantly infectious with both his laughter and his like maniacal behavior, and that's where I really get to the idea that he's kind of a prototype for the Joker, where he feels like all the stuff he does is a bit more jovial than the Joker, even because it's not as, you know, murdery most of the time, at least. Mm-hmm. But it's good, and it feels kind of dark in places. Just what it's hinting at, even if it doesn't outright do the dark things outside of one murder.
Yeah. I was really impressed with the movie, especially with the effects. I just thought for this time, it must have been such a fun challenge for them to make this film. With all the set pieces that have to move around on their own. And it happens. We don't see Claude Rains until the very end. Like, he's invisible for
don't get me wrong.
Most of the film.
I'm sure for whenever he's in the bandages, it's probably him playing him still. He's probably still in the costume, but we don't know for sure.
Well, yeah, I believe that it's him. But I mean, like, for so much of the film, like, he's not even wearing clothes. He's invisible and moving around. And there are a ton of set pieces that we go through where he has to, like, there's like a barn, indoor scenes.
Yeah, because it's
inkwells and
it's that.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's that scene where he leaves Kemp at the window and he goes round to the front of the pub. That's the shot I was talking about that felt almost like a POV scene in a killer movie, where the camera was just going from the back to the front door, and I was almost ashamed that it didn't go through the door in one shot. But I guess that was a limitation maybe at the time. This was before Citizen Kane invented a lot of cinema techniques. And other movies obviously took things further, but Joe, the one thing that's missing from this in a realism perspective is that at no point does he use his invisibility to do anything sexual or, you know, spy on anyone like that. And here's the thing though, I
did think about that too. Yeah, like,
but because
he was insane. Like,
yeah, he was insane, and
he probably would have gone a little pervy.
But here's the thing though, is despite the fact that this obviously came first, that is the one thing that every Invisible Man movie has done since this, you know, or at least since this era. Like, you know, Invisible Maniac, as we said, is all about boobs. Hollow Man has a very vicious scene in it, where he decides to sexually assault someone outright. Like, it's something that's done, and like, there's at least, even if it's a joke, you're just looking at boob scene. Every invisible person story brings this subject up. It almost felt refreshing watching this and it never even coming up that he might do something perverted.
I was expecting it.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you?
Why else would you go invisible?
Well, we find out that he wants to sell it to government so that at least, so basically he's going to make one country on the earth like the most powerful country because they're going to have an invisible army. That's his plan. Which actually makes me go, hey, you're a bit of a dick then, because you're effectively handing a victory and like dominance and a dictatorship over to someone for a price.
One thing that I thought would have been interesting to explore is, because we know the serum makes him mad because he used it on a dog and the dog went mad. But if they didn't have that in there, then we can question if it's a side effect of the serum that makes you mad, or if it's just having the power of being invisible that makes you do the wrong things. Like, is it just human nature to do something like that if you had no consequences of being caught?
No, it's a good question. It's definitely something that obviously other invisible stories have tackled. I think, yeah, I mean, you could argue that them putting in that very, I don't want to say ironclad, because I mean it's not 100%, but putting in that story about the dog and what happened to the dog on this flower, the main ingredient, does kind of give the character this kind of out almost, where okay,
Yeah.
no, it's like okay, to us it's crazy that Flora's so in love with him, but by all accounts, what we hear is that he was actually a normal person before this happened. Like he was actually a decent enough that guy, you know, he wasn't crazy. But we never get to see that, and I don't necessarily even want to. I kind of liked it when we first meet him. He's already like, you know, this
No, we
mysterious
we
character.
start in medias res. We don't
Yeah,
need the origin story. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm okay with that. But the one thing that it kind of leaves out is the idea that we don't know what it was like. We don't get to see what it was like before. So because of that, we just go on purely this story about the dog going crazy, and it, you know, the implication that he also is going crazy because of the drug that he took to achieve this. And maybe that just makes it a little bit too cut and dry, a bit too easy. Maybe you'd like a bit more ambiguity as to, you know, is he going crazy, or is this just, was he always this way? Is this just having the power, you know, whatever you want to go down? Like, is it any of those things? No, it's a good question. It is definitely something. But to its credit, I think this explores for the first essential try of an invisible character on cinema. Like, I feel like it explores a lot of the things that you would want it to. Like, it plays around with that. If I didn't even mention my favorite, well, one of my favorite shots in the movie is after he escapes from the house when the police come to get him, and he promises that he's going to kill Kemp. The police try to form a wall outside, and he gets past them, and he like pulls the guy's trousers off. There's a shot of him skipping down the road and just wearing these trousers that he's stolen from the policeman.
Yeah.
Singing a song, and it's just this delightfully maniacal, funny shot. I love it so much.
Yeah, you're right. It is incredibly just goofy to watch. It's really funny.
Yeah. But to its credit, it never goes over a line where it feels just too silly to take seriously.
It never becomes Invisible Maniac.
Yeah. And I love Invisible Maniac. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing in every case, but...
Well, yeah, I love it too, but for different reasons.
Yes.
They're different types of films.
Very different reasons. I came all the way from Sweden, wherever the line was. Belgium. It was Belgium, you're right. Oh, dear. I will say this. Invisible Maniac has the perfect final scene for that film. Love it or hate it, that final shot is the exact final shot that movie should have had. That's all I'm going to say. I loved it talking about this classic The Invisible Man. We've somehow brought up The Invisible Maniac like 5 times. I love it.
I mean, they're so comparable. Mad scientist takes serum to make him go invisible.
Yeah.
They both have great laughs.
Yes. Although this film never quite gets into his weirdly abusive mother and how that's like really messed him up for how he communicates to the opposite sex for the rest of his life.
Well, that's because this one doesn't have as many layers as its subtext. As the Invisible Maniac.
Yeah. You know what? The effects are really fun. Claude Rains is absolutely phenomenal. The characters reacting to stuff, you know, like, I mean, the only time I could really like point at and say it felt a little bit hokey is when the first policeman's pretending to be choked, because obviously he's just pretending because he's invisible. It's the only time where I kind of looked at it and went, yeah, this is an actor kind of pretending to be choked, as opposed to, you know, looking like he's really being choked.
Yeah. Sometimes the shrieking was a bit much too.
Sure. Oh, that was making me laugh in a kind of funny, like a fun kind of, this is silly, like how much shrieking is happening.
It did set the tone.
Yeah.
It's okay to laugh at this.
But yeah, the effects are great, and I think, you know, even Bride of Frankenstein has a sense of humor to it. Like, it's a much funnier film than the first one, and I think this is clearly James Whale's kind of shtick. He wanted to go a bit lighter, and I think Invisible Man lends itself to that. So, Tara, your summary and rating out of 10.
Yeah, I'm glad that the patrons voted for this one, because it was really worth the watch, and there's a reason it's a classic. I like watching it just for the fun of trying to see where the camera angle is telling you he is.
Yeah.
Where Jack is, and then just watching everything move around him, and the effects were incredibly impressive, and it's a really fun watch. I think this is an 8.5.
Yeah, it's really creative. The direction is actually really, like, I feel like I don't talk about direction as much with these older movies from like the 30s and 40s because it's from a simpler era, so I don't necessarily notice as much stuff. You know, it's a lot of movies have a very similar kind of style to them, but this one, like, they had to kind of like invent how to like handle a character like this, because no one,
Yeah.
at least not many, had done it before. Like, if there's an Invisible Man movie before this, feel free to tell me about it. But even if there was, had these filmmakers seen that? Were they aware of this random other invisible person movie that might or might not have existed? I don't know. We're the early days of cinema here. You know, we were only a few years into the talkies, as they were called.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, I'm going to give it a straight 9. I think this movie is a classic. I think it is utterly delightful from start to finish. There is a couple of nitpicks that I can throw at it, but ultimately it is very inventive, and it is my favourite of the Universal monster movies. And I think watching it again now after several years of not seeing it, it's held up for me, and I'm just reminded of why I loved it in the first place. So, Invisible Man gets very high scores from us, which is nice because we've had a few weak movies in a row.
Well, we are doing all the Terminator films, so.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the 2-hour Salvation talk last week, which, to its credit, I don't think there was very many tangents in that. I feel that was 2 hours of just raw Terminator Salvation talk.
Yeah, I had a lot to say.
Yeah. And admittedly, it's not as impressive with this movie because the movie's only like 75 minutes long, but we are verging on the length of it with this review. It's more impressive when the movie's 2 hours, which has happened a couple of times. But no, we're basically wrapping up here though. So Invisible Man is a very good film. It's a classic. If you haven't seen it, by all means do so. Even if you've listened to all the spoilers, I don't think we can actually spoil the fun of seeing it actually play out. So
yeah, it's definitely worth watching.
Yeah. So yeah, go check it out. So I'll tell you what's coming next week. Although we never actually double checked before we started, and I like doing that just in case we want to change it last minute. But we're going to be locked in now, no matter what it is. So brace yourself, Tara. Brace yourself. It's probably a time travel movie.
Probably.
It is, in fact, 12 Monkeys. We're doing 12 Monkeys.
Oh, good.
Next week.
That's exciting. I haven't seen that since the 90s, and I remember really liking it and watching it and thinking I didn't quite understand it, so I can't wait to watch it when I'm older.
Yeah, I saw it when I was a teenager, and I don't remember really understanding it very well, so I'm excited. And I actually, we spoke about this at some point off air, and Tara's probably forgotten, but so I'm going to shock her with a little bit extra work here. But we are going to watch also the short film that inspired 12 Monkeys, which is a French short called Leisure Tea, which is translated as The Pier.
Okay.
And I actually really like that short. I saw it a few years ago for the first time on a streaming service, and it's actually told in still images. It's just still images and a narrator. But I think there's like one actual shot of footage, and otherwise it's just all still images. But it was really good, and it inspired 12 Monkeys. So I think it's a nice little companion to throw in with it. So that'll be instead of the Mystery Science Theater. Not that we do that every week anyway, but like you'll get Leisure Tea as well as 12 Monkeys. So look forward to that. So that's what's coming.
I did forget.
You did forget, yeah. I figured you probably did. But so you can look forward to that next week. And you can, of course, we are going to be doing more Mystery Science Theater. Laser Blast is coming. It is coming. It will not be with next week's episode, we can guarantee that. But we'll make an effort to try and maybe squeeze it in with the following week.
We'll get it. We'll get it done. Actually,
no, it'll be the week after that. Because there is no way in hell Terminator Genesis is going to want any extra runtime at the end. That is going to be long enough on its own. So
12 Monkeys probably will be too.
Probably.
I think that one's kind of complex.
And I'm looking forward to seeing it again. I'm looking forward to seeing it and seeing how I feel about it now, because I don't remember liking it that much when I saw it in my teens. But I feel like it's one of those movies that I'll probably get a lot more out of now.
Mm-hmm.
Both just because I'm older, but also because I've seen a lot more movies.
Yeah.
That'll sort of help my interpretation of it. But yeah, so look forward to next week. Tara, why don't you start some of the outro off? What can people do?
Oh, you could check out our other reviews on our channel, the Screams After Midnight, or Twilight Zone reviews that we do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you're into old science fiction.
Yeah. You can you can subscribe, you can let us know in the comments what you think of The Invisible Man. And you can, of course, rate the podcast on the podcast app that you use. Apple Podcasts being the most common one. It's really helpful if you give us 5 stars. They share it out a little bit more, and more people will find us as a result. And as we mentioned earlier, of course, you can go to Patreon and get some exclusive episodes that we do once per month, and other content as well. And as we mentioned, some bonus bits. Sometimes we'll cut a little chunk out because it's kind of a long tangent, and it'll go up as a bonus bit. So go and have a look-see. I don't think, thinking back from the rest of this episode, I don't think there was anything I'll cut out and put as a bonus bit, but you'll never know what I'll find when I actually go digging. But I don't remember any long tangents. So that is yeah, I don't think so either. But that's basically us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. We love you loads. Keep watching science fiction films and computer at Salsa.
Yum yum.